to be always involved with my beloved ally.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So I was just thinking for a long time, and this is actually like, we have been on the occasion of 75 years of the celebrates Azadi Ka Mahotsav in Hindi.
Yes.
So this is the one. So we thought we have a
That is
number
why
of.
it is a bigger honor for me.
No. Yeah, like, you deserve to be here, and you are great constitutional lawyer, and we have. So we feel this is the way we can contribute
Yes.
in
Yes.
your growth and also the recognition from Indian side and as well as the Canadian side. So we are very happy that,
Thank
and
you.
we have more or less, I believe, Canadian model we follow for the cooperative federalism in some extent. Not in US model, or so Canadian model.
No, Manoj, cooperative federalism actually first began in the United States in the 50s.
But they are like, more independent, autonomous, or UK, because it started with the confederation, then federation. So yeah,
yes.
So some impact of confederation is still continues. So when you started with like, independent, and then you said, okay, for the security purpose, for the other trade purpose, we join, but we'll keep autonomy. So psychological element, if we go back historical, that continues. Then you say, okay, how much?
Yes, I agree. Ours differs from American in that sense. I agree. Theirs has always been, the states always had more powers.
Yeah, that. In India, like, now, and then India since, like, we had actually occasion started from 1967 when we started saying about the taste. Prior to 1967, center and state. So there was no conflict, there was no open fight. So Congress was in the center, Congress was in the, like, so it was working like in a very smooth. There was no problem.
Yeah. But Manoj, Congress also abused 356 many times.
Yeah, the Congress did, like, it's almost 80 to 90 times, like, if I say that
Very
starting from then, and it's basically some way after Bombay judgment, and it has reduced, but it still is taken place.
Yeah, Manoj, I urge you to please include these two topics. More important is introduce the subject on constitutional political economy. This is a very, very important.
Constitutional
political economy.
Okay.
It's either called law and political economy or constitution. I'm going to give my points now. In today's globalization, it is very important to have that subject to understand Indian constitutional law.
We'll do law that. And political economy. I will get some idea what you have, and then I'll see how it can be accommodated and adjusted in the Indian scenario. Yeah. That will be.
Manoj, why is it in the evening, the lectures?
Because for your convenience.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm a very morning person, so thank you so much.
So it's because you are there, and then like time zone is so we thought like in this evening, and just few days back we have also Professor Ramcharan, Bertrand Ramcharan, acting High Commissioner. He was acting.
Yes. Oh, that's very good.
So he came and he spoke about the protection of human rights in 21st century.
Okay.
So good friend of us.
He's and he's a real expert on human rights. He wrote one book on Security Council resolutions, human rights. I didn't know. If not, I would have said hello to him.
No, it was on the day before. I think on 9th evening, Wednesday. Just. 9th.
Oh, okay. But Manoj, is this aligned with the Indian Society of International Law?
This program, no, it's independent completely.
Completely, okay.
It has nothing to do.
Yeah, because ILI does things on its own. You don't join with IJL for everything.
No, it's a completely independent, and it has.
Who else spoke in this under this auspices?
We have almost Professor Bakshi. for your
Good.
information. So he spoke, Professor Bakshi, Professor Ranveer Singh, Professor, all Vice Chancellor, Professor Sudhir
Oh,
Krishna Swami, Professor
okay.
Vivekanandan, Professor I think Nirmal Chakravarti, all Vice Chancellor of almost all national law schools
All of
we
that. Oh,
approached,
that's good.
and Professor MP Singh, Professor Bakshi, both have
Bakshi.
spoken. So we have good people there.
Good. And I'm very happy because right now my second book manuscript, it's almost ready. Just a few, I'm just putting everything together and getting some copy edited. So some of the insights I share are like straight out from my thing, but I'm not going to share everything because I have to protect the integrity of my second book, but some very valuable insights.
Yeah. You have. How's your sister from Australia? She's fine?
Yeah, my cousin, yeah, but she's now in India. She's stuck there. She's in Hyderabad.
Okay.
But she's doing well. I mean, because the connection is not very good. That's why we don't speak, but she's texting me all the time.
Okay, what's up?
We are hoping that she will come here and then go to Australia.
We have many students working on the constitution law in India.
Very good.
And so maybe you can assist them also or something.
Yes. Yeah, afterwards I'll send a good reading list also. It's very, very important that they keep. I mean, this is such a valuable topic and it's got so much of ramifications. I'm going to leave them in the end. My lecture will have 3 parts. In the last part, I'm going to leave them with certain questions and topics that they should think about in their future research when they're dealing with this. It's like.
So are you doing something on the comparative constitution law like in India and Canada or USA?
Canada doesn't interest me at all. I am doing a very enchanting topic, Manoj, global constitutionalism, the whole of global south.
Okay.
Yeah, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. Oh, wow, Madagascar.
The Madagascar,
okay. I'm not saying it, but I'm not boasting. I'm just saying because it's touching upon sanctions, transitional justice. See, Manoj, people don't realize constitutional law is like my whole book is about, it's a very salient, I mean, what the constitution that we have is the Western liberal classical constitution. You know, it has immense scope. It has got a lot of excellent features. And that's why it is important to this day.
That's true.
Yeah, so it's, and also I'm so happy India is a vibrant democracy and I mean, I feel sad when I'm writing about Pakistan. They and their militarism and not good. In fact, I got in touch with a very good Pakistani scholar. He said I think, did you invite him? Because he said he had a talk to give on taxation.
No, he might have attended or spoke some other places in India. He did in the Indian Law Institute, no?
He's from the London School of Economics, and I emailed him with some questions about Pakistan and militarism. So he said, and IFIs, and of course the American Constitution and the Western liberal. So he said, Vijay, sorry, right now I'm very busy. Let me finish my February 11th talk on taxation. I'm giving it to the Indian some taxes or something, some big organization, and we'll chat. He said, but he sent me his materials, but. Very, he's really smart. He writes a lot on constitutional political economy. And
Vijayashri,
Manoj, I hope, Manoj, am I live? Can others hear me?
Everyone can hear you and see, now, so they all can see you and you are live.
Is Vinay Singh here?
Huh?
Can you please contact Vinay Singh for me?
I'll do that.
Thank you.
So don't do. Thank you. I think Somya, Rohit, Hari, Rom, aap log sab mute karo. So so kindly mute everyone. Amit Kumar Singh also, you mute. Because
Manoj, so what about the students I met when I came? Have they finished their PhD?
PhD, some some are there. They have not finished. I think as many are there.
Okay.
And some new students I'll introduce you later on. So now time to begin. If you permit, we can start with introduction
Sure.
of yours. So very
Yeah.
good. So thank
So
you very
Manoj,
much.
could you please mention, I forgot in this hurry, please mention that I'm doing archival research at the University of Toledo on the late Dr. S. Chandrasekhar.
Okay, so you can also add something what I missed.
Yeah, that I'll definitely tell. That's
so
what.
like, already everybody heard you because what you said, that is, so everybody, so conversation is like, going between you and me. So thank you very much, Vijayashri. It's a great honor and enlightenment and distinct pleasure for me personally, because we known to each other for more than 2 or 2.5 decades, or
Yes.
decades. We started with the Indian Society of International
Yes.
Law, and we have seen that how things improve over the years. We started as a young student, and gradually you are like, you become the master. So you are like, and then system start recognizing you, calling you, and this is the way we grow, which I say that all young students also, I feel those who are here, after 10 years, 15 years, you will see the difference. Like, you have a future, you have a long journey to go for 30, 40 years. We have 10, 15 years more, but you have a long journey to play. So you will be there everywhere. So you focus on your study and Nishant, आप mute करो. So I request everyone to mute, except like, Nishant, आप भी mute कीजिए, please. वर्मा जी, आप Nishant, ADR के kindly mute. Yes. All right. So Vijayashri,
जोड़ बाकी कर देना, खोला देना, तो 30 सारा डाल देना, तो थोड़ा खोला दे रहा, तब नरम होगा.
Nishant ji, Nishant Kumar Singh, kindly mute, please. So Vijayashri, so this, I request all of you just keep a close eye on your audio and keep always on the mutes. After once talk is over, you have a chance to ask question. You feel free. So kindly help us. So Vijayashri Sripati is an international constitutional law scholar who has pursued graduate studies in international law and constitutional law in the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. Her more recent book is Constitution Making Under United Nations Auspices, and that is Fostering Dependency in Sovereign Lands. She is currently completing her second book's manuscript, exploring global constitutionalism from two allied perspectives, international constitutional law, and what she had suggested me also, focus on the constitutional political economy. She has done many work. She is a known scholar of human rights law in general, with the constitutional perspective and with a specific focus on the normative framework of the international human rights. And she contributed, and she has done seminal work on the constitutional law long time back, which covering international in constitutional law, and that was published. I read, and I think many of you are aware, on the journal in abroad. She has been continuously writing in various Indian journal or abroad, and published like 2 important books and many other books she has published. Currently, she is based in as a visiting scholar. Visiting scholar, and she's she has a keen interest in the constitutional law and international law and human rights law. With this, some of the things which I might have missed. So before, and today we have invited her to speak on the cooperative federalism. Vijayashri, I would like, if something you want to add, which I might have missed, you can say, and then you can proceed for your talk as discussed as planned. You unmute, please. Unmute, please. Audio, you have to. Yeah.
It sure fills my heart with joy to be speaking on Indian public law, a subject that has enchanted me since I was 14. It is also great. It still does. And there is a greater honor here. It sure fills my heart with joy to be addressing an Indian student audience at the prestigious Indian Law Institute and what is more, on the occasion of the 72nd Republic anniversary of the Indian Republic. My hearty congratulations. Ganatantra Divas ki hardik shubhkamnaye, and in my mother tongue, na hridayapurvaka abhinandalu. I am right now at the University of Toledo on doing very enchanting work I'm doing two kinds of research. One is textual research, and the second is archival-based, archival research. The late Dr. Sripati Chandrasekhar, India's former Union Minister of Health and Family Planning, his public and private papers are now housed at the University of Toledo. He is actually a demographer, but again, it's coming back to the point that I'm going to make here. International law is actually, today we see it as separate, international law and constitutional law, but historically speaking, these two subjects have integrated, Western constitutional law and public international law. And that is why even demography, the subject of population studies, arises from these two subjects. And that is precisely why I'm here focusing on those archives there. I've already completed one project and I'm doing two more here. And I'm also working on my second book, which is on global constitutionalism. You'll see all those connections here. Now, first of all, I agreed to speak on this topic, cooperative federalism, because it falls within my expertise and what I'm doing right now. My presentation will have three parts. The first part, I will provide a global context, which is very important. I provide a global context for India's constitutional reforms, that is cooperative federalism. In part two, I will talk about cooperative federalism in India. And in part three, I will leave you with certain key thought-provoking questions that I want you all to keep in mind for your future research. You might ask, why should developments on the global front provide a context for India, a sovereign country's domestic, national, or constitutional reforms? I'm sure you all know the answer. You even said this. I remember when I gave a talk with reference to my first book, and students answered so correctly. They said economic globalization. But not many know that economic globalization has a constitutional dimension. Yes, that is, starting from 1983 until now, the World Bank and the IMF have been internationalizing and globalizing. I'll tell the difference. They have been internationalized. Hereinafter, I will use the word promote for both international and globalization. But when I use globalization, I'll only use it with reference to the post-1999 period, and I'll tell you why. So listen carefully. From 1983 until now, the World Bank and the IMF have been promoting the Western liberal classical constitution in all third world countries. This has been their conditionality. And they did so under two consecutive similar sounding conditionalities. Structural Adjustment Program from 1983 until September 1999. And from September 1999 until now, it's called, more benign sounding name, Poverty Reduction Strategy Papers. What is important is the type of constitution that they promoted. Obviously, as you all can rightly guess, considering the Bretton Woods institutions were founded by the World War II's victors, of which America was one of them. It is the classical liberal constitution. And why? Well, this also you all should know, because historically it has protected property rights and individual rights. Now, the UN family began globalizing this constitution since 1999. Now, the other question is, but India is, this conditionality is applied mainly to the heavily indebted poor countries. But India is not a heavily indebted poor country. Well, that is because from September 1999, the World Bank and the IMF sought to create a supposedly inclusive economy. And therefore, this Western classical liberal constitution became a conditionality for almost the whole world. And 1999 was almost 10 years after the post-Cold War. After 10 years after the Cold War ended, 1989, Cold War ended, it's almost a decade, and we only have one superpower. Now, this is very important to remember. Unlike the structural adjustment programs, the PRSPs were conceived to connect third world states into a global network. You all don't need to focus much on PRSPs because that's mostly for HIPC countries, that is heavily indebted poor countries. Just keep this in mind that 1999 is an important milestone. And this is my insight. So if you please, if you're writing about it, you jolly well cite to this lecture, because most literature talks about globalization increasing after 2000. And I'm providing the answer for it.
क्या रामफूल आप वो जरा से वो करे म्यूट करे प्लीज.
Can I proceed?
Yeah, go ahead please.
Another thing you have to remember is under the structural adjustment program and the PRSPs, the programs that were promoted were the same. As I already told you, structural adjustment program and PRSPs are two consecutive, similar sounding conditionalities. The only difference is that in this under SAPs, you had more reforms called first generation reforms. And the second generation reforms were through the PRSPs. The second generation reforms focused on institutions. The first generation reforms were more on policies, but both allied. You cannot separate them like that. Now, here is how and why the global developments for India's domestic reforms. It is because the classical liberal constitution underlies economic globalization. Now, this is precisely why after 2000, two subjects evolved. They are nascent, but they're fast evolving. And these two subjects are international constitutional law and global political economy. And here you can guess what the C stands for. It's not the socialist constitution, but it is the classical liberal constitution. Now, is this the end of the story? No, there is something even more important. We all know the classical liberal constitution exemplifies liberalism, which is a political philosophy. We also know that liberalism stands for a constitutional doctrine. Was it the same classical liberal constitution? Was it interpreted the same way in the 70s and the 80s? And if so, why did it change? In the 1970s and the 1980s, again, we need to switch to the superpower United States, because that's where all developments take place, and those developments percolate to the whole world, and they go through the Bretton Woods institutions. In the 1970s, the famous political economist, John Maynard Keynes, his ideas were found inadequate to tackle a series of economic crises which had engulfed the United States and the United Kingdom. It was at this juncture that liberalism took a new turn, and that is why it is called neoliberalism. Therefore, for the purpose of this lecture, and even for you all, there are certain key American thinkers whose ideas are relevant even to this day. Firstly, they have also won the Nobel Prize for economics at that time in the 70s. And the three scholars who we need to refer to are Hayek, Milton Friedman, and there's another scholar, he didn't win the Nobel Prize, but his ideas are equally important, particularly with reference to cooperative federalism. And that is Stanford University professor Barry Weingart. First, I'm going to introduce you to Hayek. 2 points we need to remember. Let's get back. As I already told you, the World Bank and the IMF have been promoting the Western liberal constitution since 1980. They subsumed it under the definition of rule of law. Now I'll connect this idea to Hayek, and I'll tell you why it is important. Professor F.A. Hayek's views are relevant for this because he is one of neoliberalism's most powerful exponents. His approach hugely shaped both UK and US policymaking, starting with the administrations of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. She was there between 1979 and 1990, and President Ronald Reagan between 1981 and 1989. There are four ingredients which you need to know. In the neoliberal conceptual configuration, you have the market, the constitution, the rule of law, property, welfare, and government as shaped by sorry for that, there was some call from India coming to me. These are the 5 elements of the neoliberal conceptual configuration which you all need to keep in mind. Rule of law, the constitution, government, property, and welfare. They don't mean the same though, as before 70s. Now, let us see why the World Bank and the IMF, when they promote the rule of law, which subsumes the constitution, why are their views aligned with the neoliberal thinkers like Hayek and Milton Friedman? First of all, these scholars wrote most of the World Bank's documents at that time. Their ideas deeply influenced the World Bank and the IMF's thinking. But this is very important. According to Hayek, the institution that best embodies his idea of the rule of law is American constitutionalism. That is, America's distinctive contribution to the world, its belief and practices about its written American Constitution. And as we all know, the American Constitution is a prototype of the classical liberal constitution, the very model that the IMF and the World Bank are now promoting. Therefore, it would be appropriate to call it not the classical liberal constitution anymore. Maybe it would be more right if we all call it the neoliberal constitution. Because as I told you, we began with liberalism, which focused on individual rights. Whereas neoliberalism, I told you the key ingredients. It is the market, the rule of law, government, welfare. So market is key here, which means the key difference between neoliberalism and liberalism is, whereas liberalism focused on individual rights, constitution served to protect the citizen from the government. It limits political power. And that we can see in our own Indian constitution. There are so many examples, right? We have an independent judiciary. The constitution is the highest law of the land. We also have the basic structure constitution. But now the Indian constitution since 1990 is being reformed, not along liberal lines, but neoliberal lines. Therefore, we need to understand, we must approach the concept of cooperative federalism. Don't treat it as a technical subject. That is wrong. It's like the Constitution is a living document. So we need to see it with fresh eyes, with fresh perspectives. And this is why we need to understand Indian constitutional developments. It is not enough if we see it only from constitutional perspective. We must see it from a constitutional political economy perspective and international constitutional law perspective. Because since the 1980s, the Western Constitution is being internationalized. Internationalized meaning it's not just Western countries that are adopting it. Non-Western countries are also adopting it. Under what conditions? Because it is a conditionality. So there the internationalization takes place. Then from 1999, it became the Constitution was being promoted to create a global network So that is why globalization began to speed after 2000. This is the reason why. If you all have access to my first book, in chapter 5, there's a very clear diagram that I've created that will help you students a lot. It's very nice and clear. It shows how all the policies need the Constitution to be implemented. It's in chapter 5. Try to take a look at it. I'm sure the ILI library must be having my book by now. So look up that figure that will explain to you. It will show you clearly how all the policies like privatization, stabilization, decentralization, everything you need, regulation, deregulation, all these need the Western liberal constitution. But we cannot call it the classical anymore. It's more neoliberal now. Why? Because the focus is on economic freedom, not on individual. It is still individual rights, but more so on economic freedom. So this is what you must keep in mind when you look at Indian constitutional developments. Are we all still citizens, or have we become consumers? These are the thought-provoking questions that should come to you all when you are analyzing constitutional developments. So do you see now, as in this first part, I have given you the global perspective, which means to understand Indian constitutional developments, you need to look to the IMF and the World Bank documents. Make it a practice. Look at the World Bank's World Development Reports. They are very, very important because those ideas get percolated into all the countries. These terms, good governance and all, where do they come from? Of course, they have a colonial antecedents, that is for sure, but it also comes, they're all routed through the World Bank and the IMF. Now we zoom into cooperative federalism. One more thing I want to remind you all, don't get carried away by terms. Since I was a kid, I have been writing articles in the Hindu about legal education, and I've always emphasized the need for analytical thinking among students. I consider myself a student even now. I am learning every day. That's my philosophy in life. I haven't arrived. I've not become an expert. And I urge you all to also always see things in a very analytical way. Therefore, to start with, do not ask, what is cooperative federalism? Instead, ask, what does cooperative federalism do? Ask, what does it do? What does it not do? And then ask the why and how question. Why is it doing what it is doing? And how is it doing? This will unfurl many answers. And then you can see, are there winners and losers? Who is being empowered? Who is being disempowered? These are the questions you need to see when you look at documents, constitutional developments about cooperative federalism. Nowadays you have almost the insights that I am giving you, you will not find in any Indian textbook, because in India still people, not even abroad, as I told you, international constitutional law and constitutional political economy are now becoming nascent but fast thriving subjects. But I don't think in India constitutional law is taught from that perspective. I believe they're still treated as only a constitutional law, as only constitutional law only perspective. I think that is wrong. You need to see it from a global and a constitutional political economy perspective. I mentioned Hayek. I want to mention one more scholar to you. His name is, as I said, Barry Weingart. He's at Stanford. His ideas on federalism are very, very important. He talks about market federalism, and that is what has seeped into all the World Bank and the IMF documents. And that is what, just a minute, I want to make my, so Barry Weingart's articles on federalism are very, very important. He introduced the concept of market federalism. Actually, he introduced it because historically federalism evolved only in United States and England. That's where it has come from. So he talks about the concept of market preserving federalism. And that is what you need to understand and explore Indian constitutional developments. Because as I said, we no longer are in the classical liberal mode. We are now in the neoliberal mode, where we talk, there's more thing about markets. Now, one more thing to ask is, what does globalization mean? Manoj, can I ask questions while I'm teaching?
I think you continue, so that will be better. Like, no, we can ask later.
Okay. In the end, okay. As I said, from 1999, the Constitution came to be internationalized in order to create a global network. What does a global network mean? When all these constitutions adopt the Constitution, that is the neoliberal Constitution, all their economies get connected. And that is how a network is created. So for what is this purpose? What are they creating this network for? Just for fun? No, it is to throw open the resources of the third world to the first world. And that is why you have so much of importance about business investors, foreign investors, business standards, something that I'm sure you come across in literature about Indian constitutional developments. Each state has to meet certain guidelines. What is all this for? In order to throw open India's resources to the first world for the foreign investors. This is how economic globalization connects with constitutional developments. And this should tell you why constitutional law is so important, because it is the highest law of the land. It is the supreme law of the land. All laws in the country need to comply with it. And this is the law that the judiciary interprets, right? So now, what does cooperative federalism do? Technically speaking, it says that it brings, first of all, let me give you, of the 4 policies that I mentioned under the structural reforms: stabilization, liberalization, regulation, deregulation, and decentralization. The 4th policy is what is directly linked to federalism. Decentralization is a process. It's a simple word to understand. To decentralize, power should not be concentrated in the center. It must be devolved. Where does the Constitution come into the picture, and what is federalism with reference to decentralization? Well, the Constitution, because it is the highest law of the land, divides power between the center and the states. When the Indian Constitution was adopted, because of the unique situation at that time, ours was a federation with a unitary bias. What does that mean? What does unitary bias mean? Meaning the center is all supreme. And also, most Western countries in America, they call it a federal government. We don't use those terms. Do you see? For us, it is the union government, because psychological reasons, our founding fathers wanted it to be a union of states. It still is. So now, coming back to decentralization, when power is devolved, what will happen if one state oversteps its role, or what happens when the central government oversteps its role? There comes the Constitution, because it demarcates, as the highest law of the land, it demarcates what a government can do and what it should not do. And the independent judiciary will act as the referee. So here is how decentralization, federalism, and the Constitution interact, meaning the Constitution makes sure that decentralization is not abused, or if centralization is the policy, that is implemented. So the Constitution is what governs the process of decentralization. And when it does that, that is called federalism. But as I already told you, Barry Weingas's views are very much in vogue today. He talks about a market-preserving federalism, meaning power is distributed, functions are distributed based on what is the goal. Cooperation for what? Just to have fun, to throw parties? No, cooperation for a certain reason. The answer is to protect the market. That is what neoliberalism brings to the picture. Therefore, I want you all to see Don't see liberalism as good or bad, neoliberalism as good or bad. Don't see it like that. That's not the way you approach a topic. You should see it critically, analytically. What does it do? Why does it do? Why is the government saying that it is doing this? Do you see? You need to ask yourself intelligent questions. What is a market for? What does it do? Who will benefit? Who will not benefit? And why will they not benefit? These are the questions you need to ask. So cooperative federalism on the face of it shows that we want the federal, that is the central government, and the states to work in unison. That's cooperative, simple, but towards what goal? What are the larger goals here? It is to create a unified common market. If you see, almost all the constitutional amendments that have been which have been done since 2000, they're all towards this, throwing open India's resources to foreign investors, making all this standardization. What is all this for? So that it becomes uniform, so that this is how a network is formed, right? In a network, everything must be equal, they must look the same type. Only then can they be connected, right? You can't have squares and ovals and rounds. You can't do that. You need to be all of one shape in order to be network, in order to work smoothly, both globally and domestically. But then this is where I want you all to ask intelligent, critical questions. I casually looked up to see, I'm writing right now my second book on global constitutionalism, and I'm giving you so many examples of like what happens in Jordan happens in India, what happens in Nepal happens in India. In fact, the World Bank and the IMF are always giving India as an example, because India is a major industrial democracy and decentralization is big here. So they give this an example for Yemen. So this is how globalization works. Therefore, you need to ask more critical questions. Just don't say cooperative federalism amendment does this, government says this is meant to cooperate. Cooperate for what? Those are the questions you need to ask. And then here comes an important critical question. Are we citizens or are we consumers? In my third part, I'm going to leave you all with certain critical questions and concepts to keep in mind. For your future research, I want you all to see this. Now, coming back, we all know when India is 1950, when our constitution came into force, we had our planning commission, right? The planning commission has been removed, and instead we have that Niti Aayog. I have it. Just give me a moment. I have it here. Here. You already know, all of you have studied cooperative federalism. You already know what are the important constitutional provisions. As I told you, my aim is not to give you a descriptive, informative lecture. You have documents on cooperative federalism, you have the amendment before you, you have all this. But what you need is tools to analyze and unpack that resolution and to understand it from a proper perspective. And that is why I urge you all to first start with constitutional political economy. Afterwards, I'll send you a copy of this Barry Weingast's article. I want you all to read it. And now then, after reading it, look at the World Bank documents and then go look at the constitutional amendment. Look at the constitutional provisions, and then you will see this interplay. Okay? Now, and do you also notice most of the amendments started taking place after 1990? That was because India was not doing well, our economy was not doing very well. We needed to pay back the IMF loan. And therefore, I don't know if how many of you remember, but it was so obvious when the then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh attended the World Human Rights Conference. In fact, I wrote about it in my National Human Rights Commission article. It shaped virtually every constitutional development in India in the 1990s. So you need to keep that question in mind. Are these constitutional amendments that we are doing, are we doing it freely? After all, India is a sovereign country, right? But still, how far are these global developments shaping us? Is it shaping us for our own good? Do we have a voice in this? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. Don't do a descriptive like, what is cooperative federalism? No, that's not the way you learn. Proper ace lawyers, think of all the Palkiwalas, the Bakshis, and And the Soli Sorabjis, why did they make a name? Because they think very critically. You all read the Times of India. I do every day. I read 3 newspapers: New York Times, the Hindu, Times of India, and one more, maybe the Globe and Mail, the Canadian newspaper. So this is what we need to do, to think critically. That's why it's a real pleasure for me. I want to leave you all with tools and perspectives which will help you see this with fresh eyes. I just casually looked up the literature on cooperative federalism, and 1 or 2 there are. The Indian Journal of Political Science I did see. In fact, I cited to one in my own book manuscript by somebody called Biju. Yeah, I in fact even contacted him. He wrote a very good article, but most of them is more descriptive. It's like saying the same thing: cooperative federalism, this is us, this. No, that's not the way. That's not critical thinking. You need to ask the right questions, the how and why question. Now, let me give you one simple example. Let me give you an example. 1 minute, I want to share with you this book. We've all spoken about cooperative federalism. You all know the provisions. You have it here. There's no point in me just reciting to you the things that have taken place because of cooperative federalism. Any Indian constitutional textbook will tell you that. I want to make you think and provoke you. This book is called, look at the title, Counter Cola, A Multinational History of the Global Corporation by Amanda Ciafone. She's an American scholar based at Indiana University, Bloomington. And listen carefully. She is in the Department of Media Studies, okay? And she has done a multidisciplinary work on public international law, media studies, and the history of corporations, with special reference to 2 countries, India and Colombia. India is in Asia, Colombia is in Latin America. 2 countries far apart, entirely different histories, different languages. But why? How do you think Amanda could tell a story about these 2 countries? What joined them? It is about globalization. And interestingly, beautiful, lovely book, and she talks about the entry of Coca-Cola, a multinational corporation. And she discusses it in the context of, can anyone tell? At least unmute and just show your hands so that I'll know you understood, you're on the right path. Is everybody listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. We are listening.
She gives the example. How do you think she will discuss this in the context of federalism? Hello. So now do you see? It's about how Coca-Cola came to the India and how she accounts for its rapacious growth. I'm quoting her. It's a rapacious growth. So do you see? How many of you thought of all this when you talked about federalism? Even the exam questions I know how it will be. Just a moment, I'm getting a software update. Just please, 1 minute. I can't stop this. Thank you. So do you see, this is how you will see developments. Who is winning, who is losing, who gets more power, why is that power used, what are these new changes, why is there an emphasis on experts today? Is there a place for local government? When we talk about decentralization and we talk about women empowerment, are women really getting empowered? And what does cooperative federalism mean? If states are going to ask for the grants in aid, how does that work? These are the constitutional political economy questions you need to know. When I finish my lecture, in another 1 week's time, I'm going to send you a syllabus with some questions in mine, and I'll share it with Manoj. He'll pass it on to you all. I want you all to start seeing constitutional developments this way. This is the analytical way of seeing. Not by if you're just going to take the Indian Constitution and look at the documents and say cooperative federalism, government entity. No, that's not the way. You won't learn anything. You need to see how other ideas are coming. Why are they percolating into the country? What is the reason? Why is there this give and take? Is there really a give and take, or there's only taking, like only following? Are we on a beltway and we are just doing what others are doing? And why are we doing it? Is it really good for our country? You see, these are the questions. This is how we can, this is how we serve ourselves and others. As a lawyer, you're supposed to help your client, right? You're supposed to give him the best possible answer. So that's why I urge you all to start seeing things from the constitutional political economy perspective, because here it is all about the economy, markets. That's what, so it's not just about constitution. Why is power being deregulated? I'll also tell you some things. What I'm telling you will not find in any textbook, because this is synthesis of many years of research and writing. We often talk about decentralization. How many of you have really noticed that there is a centralization tendency there? So this is what you should look for when you look at these documents. Decentralization, privatization, these are all terms that are dropped. And in fact, I'm going to give you another article later in my list. You'll see that Colin, the two scholars, old article where they warn us that the World Bank and the IMF tend to use privatization under the term decentralization. You saw? So this is how you need to address constitutional developments. Why? Ask always the why question, the how question. Now, how many of you have noticed, for instance, has any one of you wondered why the Planning Commission was scrapped and the Niti Aayog, a governing council, was created? Has any one of you noticed that there's now a trend towards experts? What does that mean? Don't you see power shifting away from people's representatives to experts? And you know why this is? Because one of the principles of neoliberalism is to remove the constitutional from daily deliberations and push it more towards political economy, make it seem technical. So see, that means in a way, people's power is actually being limited, because they feel that these are questions, these are issues which need not be resolved by the people. These are technical questions, and therefore they must be kept away from dispute. You see? Now, in our basic structure, we have something like gender equality, human rights. These are all considered basic structure, meaning even the Supreme Court cannot strike it down, because the Supreme Court can only amend Parliament can only amend the constitution so far as the basic structure is not destroyed. Freedom of religion, for instance, equality, these are things that cannot be, because this is integral to our republic. And it is not only integral, it's not been integral since the last 50 years. It has been there since even during colonial times. In fact, our freedom struggle is so different and unique compared to the whole world. It was peaceful. It was democratic. You had women participating in India's freedom struggle. How many freedom struggles can boast of this? Tell me. So, therefore, you need to see what perspective, why is India going the way it is going? Critical questions. No need, you don't have to criticize, badmouth. That's not the way you do. That's an improper way. It doesn't matter who the prime minister is. The point is, what are these policies? Why are we doing it? What are the goals there? Both stated goals, underlying goals, implicit goals, explicit goals. That is called critical thinking. This is how that's why I said these are the tools that I would like to share with you all when you look at things like cooperative federalism. Or take any constitutional development and you will see. Now, I have a few more questions to ask. I made a list here of the issues that how decentralization picks up. Interstate bargaining, transfer of grants, common market, stabilization. Who decides how the economy must be stabilized? Is it the central government or the local? And why does the central government have the power? Do you see? Because there is something called fiscal sustainability that again comes from the principle of austerity, which is also called stabilization. Why does the government have to apply the principle of fiscal sustainability? Is it really good? I'll share with you another book, just a moment. A very eminent scholar from Cornell Law School sent me a autographed copy of this book, which another scholar recommended me to read. It's called Austerity, the History of a Dangerous Idea, Oxford University Press, by Mark Blyth. So you see, this is called critical thinking. You need to read political economy from different perspectives and see what is being done. I have a few more queries to tell you, and then I will come to the third part where, one more thing. These terms are used very loosely: cooperative federalism, competitive federalism. Competition for what? Is it the state and the central government competing? Is that how we would see, or will you see it as a competition between the states in order to throw open the resources to foreign enterprise? That's what is competition about. And is competition good? Is it necessary? These are the things you ask. And how does privatization, stabilization, liberalization, all this, how do these processes get implemented through federalism? What is happening? Think of the broader picture. Manoj, what's the time now? Can I ask questions now?
I think we'll let the student ask the question and you can
Sure.
That will be more I think appropriate, because so they have learned a lot of things from you, and they have, I believe, some questions there. So there are two ways. Either you can put your questions, so dear participant and students, so you can put your question in your chat box, and those who want to come live, you can come live also. You raise your hand like Amit. Amit, so we start with you. You have a question, so you can start, and others can give their questions in the chat box or raise the hand, so we can allow you also to ask the question. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you so much, sir. It's really nice to have such an elaborate discussion with ma'am. Ma'am, you have comprehensively captured everything in minute particulars. However, I wish to ask you a very important understanding pertaining to the term cooperative federalism. Like you have said that the term cooperative federalism, it means that center and state comes in unison for a purpose. Like you have been emphasizing upon the fact, like, see, you need to understand the concept with the purpose. So there is a purpose to tap the market economy. So there is an unison. But ma'am, given the fact, like, when we refer to our own country, India, like, the political structure, when there is a, the political party that is in center and the same political party is in the state, so there is a natural tendency that they cooperate. And like, when there is some different political party forms the government at the center or at the state, they do not cooperate. So like, how do you see it? Like, should we call it as something different, or it is a facet of cooperative federalism? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your question. First of all, I personally think I would like to take a moral approach here. It is not proper for political parties. This political parties should not keep their party agenda in the front. It should be about the national agenda. It is about a country. Do you see? So I would personally think, like, just because, I don't know how to say, let me give you an example. I'm sure you've all seen how the Article 356 was abused by the Congress when it was in power. So do you see, this is called abuse of power. So when I would say that all states and central government must cooperate whether they like it or not. However, if the policies are, if they think, like, let us say, for instance, states can complain legitimately that because the central government has signed the IMF's conditionalities and it is doing something which those states cannot do. But that is why I'm saying that is where we all come into the picture. We need to play that role. For example, now states need to draw investment, right? So they're competing with one another. But think of the poor states like Orissa. What if they don't have that? Because globalization is not about resources, it's also about technical skills. Andhra Pradesh has a historically lot of engineers. They give importance to that computer science. There are other states which don't give that. And what if they are not able to draw in foreign investment? Then don't they stand at a disadvantage? So do you see? So that's why what kind of an amendment the central government passes is a very, very critical. And that's where the role of you as constitutional students plays a very important role. Do you realize this is your country, your constitution? So you don't read descriptive information, cooperative, be critical, and for knowledge is power. That's why I'm telling you, I'll share with you this reading list. Start reading those, and then you will see the bigger picture coming. Then once you understand, then you can say whether it is good, whether it is bad, and what's happening there. Was my answer?
All right. I think Amit, you have anything to add, or we move to the other person?
Sir, just an observation, ma'am. See, ma'am, does Constitution have any role to play into it? Because I always read the Constitution, I say that, the Constitution is very explicit on certain matters. But again, that you have made an observation that there is an abuse of the power. Then if there is an abuse of the power and the Constitution is not able to control it, then what is the remedy? Why we have been discussing so many things then?
Well, there are many remedies. You have an independent judiciary, you have a citizenry, you have checks and balances. So a constitution to work well, everybody must play their role. Do you see? If only one person plays the role, it gets lopsided. Do you see? Why did we have so much of public interest litigation in the early 70s, immediately after after emergency? Because the executive was not playing its role at all, and therefore the judiciary became very activist. So some criticized that also, but then the judiciary said, what can we do? When the government is not playing its role, we have no choice but to go. Do you see? You had prisoners writing postcards to judges. So you see? So that is why everybody needs to play its role. But the most important role lies in the citizen, because it is your country and you have to protect, right? Who else will protect? Tell, right? Please note that I'm not using the word my country because I'm technically a Canadian citizen. That's why I don't, and this is a public lecture, I have to be careful.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you. So next, anyone else? Abhishek, I think Meghna.
Sir, Abhishek here.
Acha, Abhishek. Go ahead, Abhishek, please.
Can I see you, Abhishek?
Ma'am, actually, I have network issues over here, and also I'm not well, so I'm very sorry for that.
Acha, you go ahead with question.
Ma'am, wouldn't be the cooperative federalism uncherished goal if we don't achieve fiscal federalism?
Pardon? Say it slowly.
Wouldn't be cooperative federalism uncherished goal until and unless if we achieve fiscal federalism?
Sorry, I couldn't hear a word you said.
I think some
Poor boy is having a network issue. Why don't you type it and send it?
Abhishek, you I think the background noise also, so you can chat, you can send.
So am I audible now?
You are audible now.
Yes.
So I was asking, wouldn't the cooperative federalism be an uncherished goal until and unless we achieve fiscal federalism?
These are
Unless
all, you're just throwing up terms. Fiscal federalism, cooperative federalism, competitive federalism, all is about fiscal issues only. It's all about the market. Yes, but you have to first see why the government is going in this direction. It is because, as I said, they need to open up to the first world. It's as simple as that. Now the question is that kind of competition really good? How can we protect the local business? I mean, some of these things which I'm saying might sound old-fashioned. That's what I'm saying. That's the danger which we must always see. I read about neoliberalism literature, is they make it seem so normal that you cannot even question. And see, you are also just picking up this terminology and saying fiscal federalism, cooperative federalism. Have you seen that these all three are of one type? It's all about political economy. It's all about markets. It's all about competition. It's all about standardization to create a one unified market. I'm not saying that it's to serve the market is bad, but to only serve the market at the expense of other things, it's not good. And you're all witness to the recent farmers' riot, right? You've all seen what are those issues, and that plays into so much into federalism that you are just mentioning now, fiscal federalism.
All right, Vijayashri, I think we can move from here to Megha. Megha Nagpal, you have a question, you raise your hand. Over
Yes,
to you,
sir.
Megha.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir. Thank you so much. Good evening, ma'am. And this was a very insightful lecture. Thank you so much for this. My question actually relates to understanding some of the linkages from the constitutional, aspects that we could make. Like India is making efforts now for ease of doing business, and on many of the 5 to 6 pointers that the World Bank has come up with. So India is gradually trying to improve its rank in the ease of doing business. So what could be a way of looking at the efforts that the Indian government, central as well as at the state level, is making, especially in terms of access to justice? Because you said we should ask critical questions. So what could be the good questions from the constitutional aspects in this area? I wanted to understand that.
You asked a very good question, and give me 1 day's time. There is see, I want you all to, hello, good to see you. You asked a good question. I want you, a very good question. I'll tell you because it's useful for everybody. We generally see courts as being, after all, we all want independent judiciary, right? But I want you to look at this Law and Political Economy blog, and there you will see the courts in this kind of a market federalism play a different role. So that answers your question. So that's what I'm saying. This is another way of asking, very good question you asked. What does this judicial reform mean? So not many know that actually the judiciary that in this market federalism would be siding with capitalists. So that's why you need to have a law and political economy approach. Try to sign up to this LPE blog. Do a Google search and look up LPE blog. I think anybody can sign up for it. Sign up for it and you'll see many blog pieces there on courts and capitalism. Of course, most of the literature is only based on United States. But again, how many times I am saying this, because it is the classical liberal constitution that we have, which is now being interpreted in neoliberal ways. Therefore, looking to America is a useful pointer for us. Of course, their judiciary is very different. It operates in a different way, but this Law and Political Economy blog will give you the insights about how capitalism, what role do courts play. In fact, my second book will be very useful to you all. Not to say my first book is not, but even the second book will be even more, because I'm covering India too.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megha. Next, anyone else? Ananya, thinkers. All right, it seems like your presentation was so elaborate. Chitish has one question is there. Why does corporate, you can see that, no?
No, I can't see it fully. I can only see why this corporate.
So I'll just read it out for you, if you permit. Just a second. That is a big one. Why does cooperative federalism matter so much now when India is proud of her diversity, and it is federalism which protects that diversity? Wait. क्या problem? 1 minute. Because as I understand, the different patterns of Indian federal response shaped by various political factors over time, has the time arrived for has the time arrived for strengthening India's federal design in comparison to United States?
First of all, your question is too long. Please shorten it and ask it in a more crisp and direct way.
So, like, you can go to the last, like, whether we have reached a stage where we have to strengthen our India's federalism more in line of the comparison to the United States.
First of all, we don't need to compare ourselves with United States because historically there was not a federation the way we were. Ours was from the states, they were very powerful. Then they agreed to give up some of their powers and then become part of their federation. So you cannot even compare. Historically, it's just the opposite. For us, we wanted to amalgamate all the states. I mean, you know, Sardar Patel, the important role he played in unifying. My former native city, Hyderabad, was also not part. They had to use force, legitimately so, to bring it in. But again, your question is also relevant. You must see. This is a question that you must ask. Go look at all the cooperative federalism thing and see, does it strengthen diversity? That's why I'm saying, this is why I ask you all, ask for what goals these things are being done. If it is for the market, then is there any scope for diversity? This is something you need to ask. And that's why I'm saying that Coca-Cola book is very critical. See what happened to women in Uttar Pradesh with Coca-Cola's entry. See what happened to the Kerala legislature bill. She gives so many good examples, and that's how you need to see. So yours is a good question, and you could write a paper on that. You can ask, this is market federalism, and market is the goal. Given this, what happens to India's diversity? What happens to the poor among them? So you see? Did I help you?
It has noted your response and he's happy and satisfied your very well answer. Anyone else? I think somebody has, no, Chiti is the only, I think. If not, then we come to the close of this session by putting few thanking remarks and observation. But there are two ways to look into that. So as academic perspective, what I feel, which some way I differ or disagree with, with all humility, that one is look into the cooperative federalism on the constitutional perspective. The first is the fundamental, how the center Article 245 to the 263 of the Constitution, that needs to be understood. The power struggle between this. So cooperative federalism needs to be viewed as a constitutional law student, which I teach. And that is the way I see it, power between parliament powers, and then seventh schedule, Union List 1, 2, 3. And one can also branch in looking in the Canadian Constitution, Australian Constitution, and the United States Constitution. That's in general I'm saying, and I'm not going in the critical, in basic fundamental, making students who has to appear in the examination, who has to qualify teaching also. So the number of places he has to. Second, I agree with you also on that point. When you go for the higher studies, like in the PhD program and other places where this cooperative is otherwise it will be descriptive. When you write an article, when you write a book, when you write
Manoj, no, it must be instilled as a student at the LLB
ultimately
level.
The goal of education is also to the moment they become very critical, so its system doesn't
critical from a multi-perspective.
No, I'm
a
coming.
Political economy is a basic.
So we differ. I agree with you. So that we all have. So I say this is the way. We proceed, but it's a critical, analytical, critical, analytical.
Forget the word critical, analytical. And to be analytical, you need to see it from the full perspective. And political economy is very, very important.
No, I'm not discarding the political economy. I'm just saying I'm not discarding your approach.
Because constitution is about making the economy work, no, Manoj. Yeah. And as one of the students rightly said, now that we have a market economy, then is it not knowledge about political economy is our basic duty?
No,
India is
market
no longer a
economy
welfare
has
state
like
for Manoj.
economic. I see in a different way. Economic globalization has become real and is inevitable.
Yes,
Globalization has become real because of the WTO. Because of China also waited a long to become the member of the WTO. Even the poor countries, they want to become part of the WTO, whatever reason. So they are sacrificing their constitutional values, their constitutional ethos, and they jump on the grabbing on the economic level playing, so-called level playing field in the world market. So that is as a market is playing very important role, and we are sacrificing number of constitutional values, and something is there. So that has become supreme. That is the consideration has become supreme in today's context. But let me summarize, and we'll have more engagement later on the discussion. But it's a very good, you have given a number of perspective, and particularly what you said today is a market, rule of law, government, property, and welfare. These are the very there. And also you have said that is very interesting about the role of the first generation and second generation, particularly structural changes in the first World Bank and IMF. And that second, you have mentioned, I believe,
institutions.
institutional reforms in the that's a part is there. I remember when World Bank in the in African continent, they pumped the money, and money has gone in the buying the arms and fighting conflict, and that is the they started thinking about what is the cause. What is they found there's just something if we want to reform, or if we want we'll be able to, if we want to impose our ideas and those ideas to be implemented effectively, we have to focus on what you say, liberal democracy constitution or new liberalism form, and give emphasis on the on the part of uh, good governance, good governance. So they said the agenda, the good governance and human rights, that angle World Bank actually introduced, and that is the good governance. They say you should have a constitution, liberal constitution, individual market. Of course, that is very important point you have. And the second page, which the poverty reduction goal, what we see now, Millennium Development Goals, and
Yeah, but Manoj,
the
see,
other
don't
goals.
say
Yes.
poverty reduction is what it means. It actually means market-oriented development.
No, I
That's
agree.
the
So
key we need to unlock.
entire as you suggest, that is there. And there are ideas which we have to in Indian scenario. There is something also you agree that cosmopolitanism, that is the what we have been cosmopolitanism, where they say global distributive justice. They also start saying there's a responsibility. What John Rawls had said, and this in the theory of justice, there is an obligation on the rich state. So even if you apply difference principle, though he never argued or supported justice as a in the global justice, he said that justice is intertwined with the sovereignty. And however, in his another book where he have says there are wrong state, good state, and then there are different states, and they have an obligation on that particular part. So there are a lot of things we also, and I agree with you, that focus should be constitutional, political economy as a new approach, which some way we are missing. And I'm sure that as a you promised that some of literature which you will send,
Yes,
and
yes,
I would like to circulate to my colleagues and all of them
yes.
for the for further reading, and that will that is the purpose. That is the purpose. When we exchange ideas, when we list different perspective, we sometimes agree, we may disagree, but ultimately we agree to agree that there's a need to have exchange always in the ideas, and that will continue for there. I just
And
last.
as I told you, Manoj, I'm learning. I will learn till I breathe my last. So this is my way of sharing. I don't see myself as an expert. I'm learning every day.
No,
And I want to share what I'm learning.
And I think meanwhile we have Ananya has thanked you for informative session, and Anurag has posed a question to you before we say goodbye to each other. That is madam, what is the difference between coordinate federalism and cooperative federalism?
Coordinate federalism and cooperative. I've not heard of this coordinate federalism. Where did you hear this from?
Anurag, could you answer? Where did you hear this coordinate federalism, or
Sir, actually, when we received the invitation of this lecture, I was searching on the net. So there I found this. So I thought I would ask.
God,
I was
people miss, I don't know why. As I'm telling market federalism, these are all terms that people just throw up. I
Okay.
don't know.
I think it's
Common
more or
sense.
less like similar synonyms, coordinate and
Yeah.
cooperate. Huh?
Yeah,
Coordinating
when I was studying about the Niti Aayog, there I found it.
It's in a sense of cooperation, I believe.
Yes, I agree with Manoj. It's coordinating, is bringing everything together. So
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
you're most welcome. I wish you all the very best to all of you.
So the Supriya also thanks you for informative
Thank
session. So many people are thanking you. So let me if anyone from the Puneet ji or Meena sir, आप लोग कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं, कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं, because this program we have organized in association of our alumni, that like
very nice. I
so
saw
our
that.
senior student, like our alumni president Sri Meena ji is there, and Puneet ji also is here. Both are.
Oh, can I see you all?
So,
Puneet,
very good.
Hello.
In CB.
Yes,
Puneet,
I
you want
can.
to say a
Hello,
few
Puneet.
words? You are welcome to say a few
On
words.
behalf of the entire Alumni Association, I really wish to thank you for the informative session, as well as wanted to thank all the participants who could spare time on a Friday evening as per the Indian Standard Times. And this is very informative, and we would wish and try at our level that we can partner with ILI going forward, and
Yes.
also arrange and maintain this level of interaction internally. And the benefit that we have is that we have a cross border interaction, so to say. And
Yes.
we should make the most of the virtual world available to us.
Yes.
So thank you very much to you, ma'am. Thank you to Manoj Kumar Sinha sir, who has always been very inspirational to all of us.
That's very good.
He has been, very encouraging to the entire alumni body.
I agree. He always keeps the institute's goals at, he takes that into consideration.
I wish to thank Amit also. He's a very active executive member. And last but not the least, our president, Meena ji, who is very, very, humble in his approach and very participative.
Can I see you, Meena ji?
Are you Meena sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, Meena ji.
आपका नाम मीना है?
Yes, ma'am.
आसी मीना है, टाइटल सरनेम है इनका मीना, वो मीना नहीं है. Last title.
Meena, to be precise. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ILI team, for organizing such sessions. Thanks.
And also, I request on behalf of the alumni and ILI that Vijayashri, you could suggest some name, like whom we should invite. You can coordinate with. So coordinate federalism. So what coordinate? You can coordinate. So we have got an answer. So you can coordinate with the other speakers whom you feel be interested. We'll be very happy to have him immediately, like in the evening, whenever you suggest us.
Okay.
So with this, I think Puneet ji, Meena sir, Amit all have thanked you. So if you allow us, we say good night.
1 minute. Manoj, has my book been ordered by your library?
Yes, it has been 2 copies already available in the library. And
okay, please, students, read chapter 5. Very useful for your. I'm not self-promotion. I don't care. Don't read. That's your problem. But for the purpose of political economy, read chapter 5.
We say continue. They remember you all have to read, and I'll ask question. Or madam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Once
sir.
again, and have a nice
Thank you, ma'am.
everyone. Thanks.
Thank you
very
most
much.
welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we close now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Meena ji. Good night.
Well,
Good night, everyone.
Good night, sir. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Night.